Well, I am delighted to be here with Christy Goehner. She's not only one of the earliest adopters of using KEVA Planks in the classroom, she's also a longtime friend. I've known Christy since before she was a teacher, and now you've been teaching for like over 30 years, if I did the math right. And so Christy's become she's one of the resource teachers at her school and mentors other teachers that are up and coming. She also, her photogenic husband and children are on the original packaging of KEVA Planks, as they're long dear friends. And I use Christy as one of my go-to teachers when I have new ideas, things I want to test out, when I want teacher feedback, anything like that. Christy's taught in a variety of grades and has such a wide range of experience, and she's very honest and straightforward and practical about everything she does. So I always am very happy to get her input on anything. So anyway, so welcome, Christy. I'm so glad you're talking with me today.
Thanks, Ken.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to ask you for this session, I wanted to find out just some of the ways that you have been using KEVA Planks in your classroom, and primarily so we can have practical ideas for other teachers who maybe they just found them in a corner and they don't even know what they are, or they've just used them on a limited basis and with just free building. A lot of people just use them for free building, but I know you've used them to actually teach a lot of subjects. So wanted to explore some of that. So, but why don't we start if you could share maybe an example of one of your favorite KEVA activities that you do, that you've done, whether it's teaching a particular lesson or just some activity that you do.
Okay. So right now, my job, I teach mostly math. And so every day I like to start my class with what I call a warm-up. It's like 3 or 4 questions that spiral reviews what we've been doing and sometimes introduces a new concept. And after the kids do the warm-up, they talk to each other about their answers. And then I always try to have a right brain kind of activity for them to do. So because they stagger when they finish, and kind of one of my teaching philosophies is always have the kids doing something. And so KEVA has become my go-to activity for the extension after the warm-up. One of my favorite, or the kids' favorite, is the challenge of how wide can you build a structure with a limited number of KEVA. So I might get 20 KEVA or get 30 KEVA, only one can touch the desk. How wide can you go? And then I'll give them a few minutes. And as kids finish the warm up, they grab their KEVA, and then I go around with a meter stick or tape measure. And the winner usually gets the satisfaction of knowing they won. Every now and then there's a prize, but almost any activity I like to do, since they're kind of working individually at that point, I like to do just things where they have a limited number and have to build something. Or recently, it's snowing here today, I had them design a snowflake and then let them do what I call a gallery walk and just walk around and see all the different ones. So I mostly use, in a day in a day out way, I use them in probably 5-minute bursts of of time. Yeah. And so I'll do the shorter challenges, and then they beg me for KEVA days, and so on those days we'll do some of the more complex.
Okay. So when they are getting the blocks, do they just go grab 20 from some source you have, or how do you distribute those?
I have them in the canvas bins with the handles, and they're around my room. I think I have 4 bags out at all times, and so they know where they are, and so they'll just go count out what they need, and come back to their seats with them.
Okay. One of the other activities I know you do is the matchstick puzzles. And,
yes, I love the matchstick.
And so could you tell us about how you started doing that and sort of how you converted matchstick puzzles into KEVA Planks, which is actually a product now that thanks to you. But tell us sort of the story of how that came to be.
That's a good question. I'm always looking for kind of 5 to 10 minute right brain activities. So I'll explore at like the book fair or different places and I'll buy books that have mind games, mind puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that one of those books one time had a matchstick puzzle idea where move 2 sticks and create this. And I thought, I have KEVA. I bet I could do this with KEVA. So I just started Googling them and like matchstick puzzles, and I would find them and kind of create my own KEVA challenge with them. So that's really where I found my resource. I was like, I don't have matchsticks, but I have KEVA. And so then I think I mentioned it to you, like, hey, I really do this a lot. And so that kind of
and the funny thing to me is that you mentioned that years ago, and I said, I hate matchstick puzzles. Because I personally don't really enjoy doing that activity, and so, but you told me later on that the kids love it and it's very easy and it really works for this, and so.
And the funny thing is, like, you have adults come in and out of your classroom sometimes. It's actually adults. Well, the kids love them, but the adults who have happened to be in that day, they are so into it. They're like, don't tell us the answer. Don't tell me the answer. And so it's just really funny to see. I think it also, one of the things I've noticed in the last few years of teaching, it's hard to say what the source was, but kids tend to not have as much of a long suffering with figuring things out. They're used to instant answers. And one of the side benefits, maybe that I didn't think through, but now that I do with a purpose, is that productive struggle. And the matchstick puzzles are a great way to do that. I mean, even the quick builds, how wide can you go? How tall can you go? There's a productive struggle, because if it falls down, I don't tell them how to do it. I was like, oh, what do you think? Why do you think that happened? Or when they're struggling with a matchstick puzzle, I'm like, well, which ones have you tried? And I don't just give them the answer. And so I've noticed them getting better at long suffering, so to speak, like that productive struggle. To the point now they don't want me to tell them the answer. They want to figure it out, which has been a change from the beginning of the year.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting how that's so helpful for the students to have that gentle sort of a short struggle. And it also frees you or any other teacher up from, you don't have to know how to build a widest structure or give them tips on how to do that. Or even you don't have to know how to solve whatever puzzle you've just given them. It's up to them to work that out. So so you don't have to have an expertise in construction or in puzzles to do these. You have to be a good encourager and question asker, which you're very good at.
And sometimes when I'm feeling particularly brave, I won't look at the answer myself. I'll try to figure, struggle with them. So, but.
And so, and because of you and your persistence with telling me how much you and your students like it, we eventually did create we have something called Mind Movers now. And so it's a deck of cards that give the prompt, and then you flip the card over and it has the answer to it. So having that deck and distribute those, you do them one at a time so that they don't blow through
right, because I hadn't had access to multiple. But I'll tell you what, the other one I use often is your brain builders, the architecture ones, and they love those too. And I'll challenge them to build it without looking at the photo. There's a spec drawing on one side and a photo of the finished thing on the other, and I'll challenge them to build it without looking at the photo. And some of the beginner, like when they're first coming to me in 7th grade and haven't had a lot of experience with KEVA, I will let them build it with the picture, and then the next part, learn but they're getting good at those too. So it's so nice just to have a deck of cards and a thing of KEVA, and it's a quick grab a card, grab 20 KEVA, and see if you can build the structure. So.
And we have brain builders, and there's another one that's very similar called 3D challenges, which is the same as the brain builders. The cards are just a little bit bigger, and they have it's a different set of challenges. But we
sounds like
we
I
have,
need to get on the website.
yes.
Get myself some new things.
So that's great. What's something else that you've done? Maybe if you think of a particular subject or topic that you were teaching that maybe any other teacher would never, ever think of using blocks with fourth graders to teach this subject, but you did that. I don't know.
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't teach language arts. I haven't for several years. However, we had a teacher absent the other day, and we were out of subs. So I ended up taking her language arts class, and so we did a KEVA day, and they were reading a novel, and so I had them design a scene out of KEVA from their novel. The novel is called Touching Spirit Bear, if you're familiar with it. But it was really neat to see them. In the novel, there's a bear, like a polar bear, but the boy carves a totem pole and he builds a cabin, and there's a thing called an ancestor rock. And it was wild. I had them in groups of 3 and just I said, choose any scene you want. And it was really neat to see how they were using KEVA to create the scenes from the book. And then I let them walk around and guess what the other groups had built to see if they could put the KEVA structures with the novel. So is that what you were asking? That's one example. My history teacher friend uses them to build when they're studying different parts of history, that they can build something from that historical era. And so,
can you think of a specific example, like from your colleagues? Like a story of something they were specifically.
Well, one of my colleagues uses them. They teach it's world history. So when they're teaching the time period with where the tabernacle was built and the people of Israel, they will build the tabernacle out of KEVA, and it has an inner area and an outer area, and they'll build all that. When my son did a history fair, they were doing Egypt, and he built a pyramid out of KEVA, and we let him glue it because it had to transport to school. So we still have that glued pyramid from him. I'm trying to think of, you could almost do anything. Like I know years ago when I was teaching science, we did, they had to design a plant, any plant they wanted, but it had to have the parts of the plant, the roots, the stems, the leaves, the petals, or the flower. And it's neat to see their creativity, what they come up with. It didn't have to be something that really existed, but it had to have all the parts that a plant has.
So back to when you were subbing, what was the grade that you were subbing for? That was
seventh grade. Language arts.
Okay. And I think I may have originally learned the idea of doing the gallery walk as you described it before. So what are you trying to accomplish when you're having them walk around and look at everything else?
That's a good question. Some of it is identification. Like, can you identify the parts of the story in this thing? Some of it is just kindness and, respect for what other people have made. When we did the snowflakes recently, that was an Algebra 1 class. I have 19 kids in there, and there were 19 very different snowflakes. And it was really neat to see that. And so when I let them do the gallery walk, they got inspired too by other people's like, oh, what a good idea to do this or that. And then if time allows, I'll let them go back and maybe like that time I let them walk around, and then I sent them back and told them their snowflake had to touch the edges of their desk. So I wanted them to make it go bigger. And then looking at like, oh, how did they use that geometric shape or that repeated pattern that kind of thing. But I think they get inspired when they see what each other makes. And that was just a free, like, there were no instructions except design a snowflake. And it's funny how they'll start like building up and then sort of realize like, I'm not going to get very intricate if I'm just stacking. So I don't know. It's just neat. I guess I do it more for them to share ideas and show interest in what each other makes.
Right. Good. Can you think of any other sort of open-ended prompts that you've used similar to the snowflake or anything else that you've used?
One they like to do, especially after a break or something, I'll say, get a handful of KEVA and design something you did on break. And I have to guess what they make. Or I teach at a Christian school. So like I'll say, design something that reminds you of the biblical story of Advent, or make something out of KEVA that you love about Thanksgiving. And like they'll design a table, or they'll try to do their grandma, or they'll do a basketball hoop, and some try to go 3D and some keep it 2-dimensional. And then I try to go around and guess. They like, for whatever reason, they like when I have to guess what they make. And so, it's like, is this a person or is it, because, sometimes it's hard to do a head on a stick figure, and so, but it's fun. They have fun with that or laugh at sometimes I guess wrong on purpose and just, but I don't know. They seem to enjoy any so that might be like when you're finished, get KEVA and build me something you did on your snow day. And then, so those are just quick little, but it keeps them busy and active and thinking, and busy kids are usually not misbehaving kids.
Right.
So,
and one of the things I love about that sort of prompt is that, like, what did you do on your snow day? Is that even if you've been building with them for a long time, it's really taking an abstract idea when they have to think about what they were doing, and they have to somehow represent what may be kind of abstract, that something that is not easy to build with blocks, and figuring out how to do that. And with just the creativity that you have, it sounds like you don't run out of little prompts. And even if you used, what did you do with your snow day yesterday, if you gave that same prompt tomorrow on something they did, they were doing something different. So it becomes an entirely different exercise each time. So I love that.
Yeah. And I'll tend to vacillate between like free things like that and then more structured, like build a triangle a tower that has a triangular base as tall as you can with, 2 minutes or whatever, if I'm doing something all together. So where that's more structured, like this is how you need to do it. And then, so I'll vacillate in a given week. I'll do, 1 or 2 free things and 1 more structured, or a matchstick puzzle
And as a teacher, what would you say that students are, what's the difference for what a student is gaining from it if they're doing something that is quite open-ended, so there's almost no parameters, versus you giving very specific parameters?
It's a good question. What are they gaining from that? I think they're gaining a chance to express themselves in their own way. They're also, I've noticed that, you'll see the progression as the year goes for the, how elaborate they'll try to make. Like they might start, okay, what did I do on my break? I slept. So they'll do a bed with like 3 KEVA, but then as the year goes on, that will be a little more elaborate. A pillow will go on there. The person will be on the bed. It'll have a headboard, or, like they start to, I think, be more comfortable with the planks, and also more comfortable expressing themselves that way. But it's also like just a different place in your brain that you're activating. And I found, being a math teacher, that that solving puzzles or challenges is as helpful in brain building as memorizing multiplication facts. Like both are important.
Right.
And if you only do one, you know, and never do the other, then I think it helps them problem solve in the long run. I think it's worth the time that I devote to it each day for a right brain kind of thinking puzzle challenge activity.
Yeah.
So did I answer your question?
Yeah, you did. And it's interesting just thinking of like older students using blocks, playing with blocks on a regular basis in a math class, which is normally very abstract. It's normally just numbers and paper or screens, and to be using the right side of the brain in a math class. I think a lot of math classes don't do that very much. So I think that's one of the things that makes you a really good teacher and students enjoying your classes, because you break it up that way. And you do things like gamifying these things, like in the substitute story building thing, make it into somewhat of a game where you've done this and now you're trying to guess. And so it's it really brings sort of an element of play into the classroom, into the whole experience. And you do that instinctively, just trying to keep things interesting for them. So that's great.
I would say, like, for any teacher, I've told you this before, but having KEVA in the classroom is like the best, like, back pocket thing you can pull out, you know, when the day is weird or you have to sub for someone, or you have to have a sub, like having KEVA, you all have so many ideas on your website too. And because I've been using them for so long, I have a lot of those memorized or in the back of my mind, but it is such a great way to keep kids active and engaged in a situation where they might otherwise like be sitting and quietly in the study hall, or, you know, so it's like my back pocket, like I'll whip this out, you know, hey, we need someone to cover this class. I'm like, hey, I'll do KEVA. Like, and so it's a great, like, for any teacher, and teachers know, like, you always need those like last minute, you know, ideas to have in the classroom. And
your students, your school has had KEVA Planks for a long time, so they can kind of grow up. They may be doing them in first grade, and then they're still doing them in fifth grade when they get there. How have you found that to be? By the time they get older, have they started to get tired of them, or
no?
How does that go?
I've never had a kid say, "Oh, not KEVA." You know, I not to my experience.
Okay,
I've never had a kid get tired of them. I mean, I think if you did it all day, every day, they would get tired of them. But
that was a loaded question, because that's what we see all the time, is that people don't get tired of them. There's when it's so open-ended, they're thinking originally as they're doing each thing. So
and even like I teach honors algebra 2 this year. I mean, we'll design coordinate planes, and if I'm teaching them how to find the roots of a quadratic, which is like a parabola graph and where it crosses the axis, you can design with KEVA like something with no root, something with one real root, and something with 2 roots, and they start to get, and then you are introducing them to, you know, complex numbers and imaginary numbers. And so it's not just like kindergarten, first grade, like I'm using it with my 10th grade honors math class just as often as I use it with my 7th grade kind of remedial math class.
And this is exactly why I'm talking to you, because the first part of that, I didn't know what you were talking about. and so to have be able to talk to you and hear what you're doing in fields that I don't even know anything about. I was yesterday getting ready to do a video about snowflakes, and then I realized I actually don't know much about snowflakes. I've been using this open-ended prompt for years to make a snowflake, and then I don't go very much further with that. And I'm so thankful there's teachers like you that have the in-depth understanding of these topics already, and so you can take there's all the things you want to know about quadratic equations. That's what you're spending most of your time on, and you're just using KEVA Planks for just one sliver of that lesson to make it a little bit more concrete, a little bit playful, and but it still becomes an important part of what you do, and making something like quadratic equations that isn't that thrilling for a lot of people, but at least becomes fun and hands-on for a moment while you're making those graphs.
And they tend to remember it better when they have to design a parabola that doesn't touch the axis, With KEVA, they'll remember it. I mean, they can draw it,
right?
But it kind of helps solidify things in their memory.
Yeah, there's a connection when the hands and the body are involved with an activity versus just the eyes and the brain. So good. Can you think of anything else? I'm just mining for ideas here for if you can think of other things you've done with KEVA Planks.
So our school ran an elective in enrichment with a KEVA enrichment class that met, I believe it was once a week for a quarter or a semester, and then we switch around the kids. And so that was the everybody wanted to be in that one, but they couldn't all take it. And we offered, we had a sign language class that time, and but just having that. And it's a great for a STEM elective. You can do, design ramps, and can you make a ramp, the ping pong ball will go down, and then can it have a curve or two curves, and how do you have to change, they've been challenged to build a bridge. And I have on hand, my math book, right? That's pretty heavy. It's like 7 pounds. So I was like, it has to hold my math book upright, so you have to design your bridge, at least a KEVA and a half span or whatever. And so those are longer challenges. So if I do those in math, it takes almost a whole period or a good part of it. And you don't always have time to devote, 30 to 45 minutes for a bigger challenge, but running that elective was great. I think we've invited you. You came in and spoke to that elective. They're very impressed that I know you. But anyway, so we've done things like that as a school, or had one teacher, I think at the elementary school, had the gymnasium for a day, and they put a line down the middle, and they had, I think it might have been during the Civil War, the history, and you're the North, this side's the North, this side's the South, and they had to build things that represented that time period in history. So the North side was building industry more, and the South had plantations, and then they had, that took a whole class period, went to a bigger space, and used KEVA for that.
Yeah, that's such a great idea. And you could do that with any war, any conflict, any region. So that sounds fantastic. Yeah. Can you think of maybe a particular student, without their name or anything, but just a situation where a KEVA Planks made a difference in a particular student's life?
Oh, that's a good question.
Maybe.
It's hard to think of one student, but I feel like there have been so many students that once they gain confidence, they have kind of their aha moment of I can do this. So I think it happens most recently in my 7th grade class. So my 7th grade class is about 12 students who are not, who identify themselves as bad at math.
Okay.
But I don't, they would self-describe themselves as, I'm bad at math. I don't like math. And using KEVA and some other strategies, there's one in particular who now claims math as his favorite subject. And he has grown tremendously in his ability to work hard on something that he doesn't get. And I remember him having a moment when we were doing the challenge to build as wide as you can with only one KEVA touching the desk. And he was struggling with that. And he kept wanting, if you've ever done that challenge, you know what happens as you go out, they want to drop and you really need the weight on the top. But if you only have a limited number of KEVA, so he kept wanting to hold down the top of his thing. It was like, measure it now, measure it now, but he was like, I need more weight. And so just the fact that he was realizing there's some cantilever going on here. I mean, he didn't use that word, but there's physics happening here.
Right.
And he discovered that. And then we looked at even pictures afterwards of bridges. And even those old, the Brooklyn Bridge with the big towers, why were those towers there? And they started to see in bridge construction or balconies or whatever. And he kind of had this, I don't know, this, I can do this. And that has transferred to many things. So he was a very reluctant learner. And now this past week with snow and stuff we've had here, our math class didn't meet at all this week, just the way it worked out. And he announced to the class how horrible that was, that we couldn't have math.
Wow.
And math is the class. Wow. That's our favorite subject. But a lot of it is that the confidence building. So he's a student, I could say there are other things that, of course, not just KEVA is contributing to that, but that has been a huge confidence builder for him to be able to have success doing that. And then lots of praise and, encouragement as well. But he's definitely one that was starting to see connections between KEVA and other things, or hey, you know how you worked really hard on your tower? Let's work hard on solving this problem. And he's starting to buy in,
Yes. Well, that's very encouraging. That's the sort of thing I was hoping to hear. So thank you for that. Any other maybe general tips or for someone who has KEVA planks in the classroom for maybe how you manage them or how you think about them, or just if someone said, I just found some KEVA planks in the back of my room and I'm not sure what to do, what are maybe just a few things that you might advise them for how to get started?
That's also a good question. Just in terms of management of KEVA, I have two simple rules when we use KEVA. The first one is you may only knock down what you build. And the second rule is you cannot throw. You can't throw them. So other than that, I don't really have rules. But if a kid knocks down something someone else builds, they can no longer play that day. Or if they're throwing, I mean, they are wood and they do have sharp edges. So I try to keep the rules of engagement really simple. And then I would say if you're not familiar, if you haven't used KEVA a lot, I might say start small. Do a small, the 5-minute challenge as just part of something in your classroom, either to finish the day or just start the day. I know for me personally, I found that when kids walk into a room, if they don't have something they immediately are supposed to do, like establishing routines, that's when you can have behavior issues or kids being unkind to each other because they have this free time that they're trying to fill. And I teach middle school, so mostly middle school. I do teach a little high school this year. And so for me, it's important that they walk in the room and have something to do. So that could be a KEVA thing. As they walk in, you greet them at the door. Hey, grab 20 KEVA and, build me this. And it just engages them immediately. And then once you get everybody there, then you can clean them up and start your class. Or I think that so if I had never used them before and we're just learning, I would say start small. Don't do a huge big thing, maybe your first time, but just start small. Hey, design me something that flies, something that grows, or like just small prompts like that I'll give. And then it can get everybody together, and then you can put them away and start your day. Or at the end of the class when there's extra time. Is that?
Yeah, that's perfect.
And then explore the website. Like, it is incredible. So many ideas of ways to use them. And I would say, don't be afraid. Like, I teach math, but like they'll walk in, I'll say, grab a handful of KEVA and design something that grows. Well, is that really math? You could argue, oh, that's a science concept, but it's an activity that gets them thinking. And so I would say, don't be afraid to do something outside your content area when you're working with KEVA, because a lot happens when they're exploring.
Right. And I've always been impressed with the way you keep that variety in your room, that you strategically do that sort of thing so that it's not 100% math and numbers while you're in this classroom. And the brain likes that fluctuation of being able to go from one thing and then back to another. So,
and I'm big, I have tangrams, if anyone's familiar with that. And I find these games, these dice games or card games where we play integer war, where positive numbers are the black cards and negative numbers are the red cards. And it's war, except now they have to think, oh, is -4 more than -3? And so I do a lot. Like, I think KEVA is a huge part of my math class, but I also have there's other, right brain kind of things that we do that also, is playing war math. Well, maybe, it is number sense. And that's a huge one when they're first learning positive and negative numbers. They love integer war. And, but there's so many things with KEVA that I do in my math class someone may argue is not really math. But
right. Well, that's very helpful. Well, these are fantastic ideas, and I think they'd be very helpful for someone if you're listening or watching and have not been sure what to do with your KEVA planks. This will give you a great jump start on that. And thank you, Christy, for sharing your years of experience and your insight on these. It was interesting hearing some of the things you say, that when I'm doing professional development, that I'm realizing the origin of some of the things, like your 2 rules of what you can't do. I adopted those, and years ago from you.
I don't know.
I think I got them from you. So, but anyway, it's been very, very helpful, and thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're welcome.